When you have an accident, time counts. And if we can detect accidents with something like a smartphone, we become, let's say, more powerful in detecting more accidents. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Insurance Telematics podcast. Today, again, with our Chief Data Scientist, Katarina. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure. Today we have a very important topic. We're talking about automatic impact detection, crash detection. And why is this so important? So I had an accident myself where I was only incidentally found by a truck driver because I had a rollover accident at night. And I have seen myself what could have happened if nobody would have found me. So this is a personal topic that I'm very, let's say, emotional about. And I want to tell you why I believe it's very important for the world. So when you have an accident, time counts. And if we can detect accidents with something like a smartphone, we become, let's say, more powerful in detecting more accidents. And yes, there are ways to better detect accidents than with a smartphone, which is installed hardware, which are dongles, etc. But the point is we want to democratize this feature. So if you think from an insurance perspective and you can equip 100% of your customers with something that works about 90% of the time, whether you can equip maybe 3 or 4% of your portfolio that works 95% of the time, I personally would opt for a solution that is freely available, or let's say available at a very low cost and can help many peoples. So Katarina, we're now talking a little bit more about the technical aspect. So what is automatic impact detection? And what's our goal with automatic impact detection?
Well, automatic impact detection basically means that we automatically detect a car accident or a vehicle accident, basically, based on smartphone sensors only, with the goal to trigger the emergency chain as soon as possible, so to promote increased safety, and also, of course, for the insurer to, mainstream their processing of the claims and reduce time of this processing and cost, so to say.
So what you're saying, our goal is to detect accidents. That's clear, but what kind of accidents are we trying to detect?
Well, we're trying to detect, like, as you said, smartphone is not perfect. There is a couple of things we need to consider. So we're trying to target accidents that can cause bodily injury. That is our main focus, okay? Because it's super hard with the smartphone. It's a moving device. It's not fixed attached to a car. So we basically record also other things that happen to the smartphone. It can fall down, user can do something with it. So there is much noise. So this is why we say, okay, the focus we lay it on really accidents with bodily injury.
But what we're doing is, and this is important, what we are doing in smartphone detected accidents is we're still saving these mini crashes for F&OL use at a later stage of the claims management. But we're trying to forward only accident that have a likelihood of bodily injury.
Exactly. Probably, if I may, I would walk you through the process in a step-by-step setup. So we said it's smartphone only. So all the data collection, data processing, and most of the interpretation live directly on the device, on the smartphone itself. So the very low level, what we do is we listen to accelerometer data. We sample it at a very high frequency of 100 hertz on the device. And there we just basically listen for peaks, because an accident would manifest itself in a high peak in the accelerometer, and then there is nothing for some time at least.
And here I need to make a short break, and just for our audience who is not so technical, just explain. So acceleration basically measures gravity, and it measures gravity on multiple axes. So we can understand how an object moves in a three-dimensional, let's say, environment, how it moves forward and backward, left and right, up and down. So this is accelerator. And you can, as a user, you can, let's say, understand accelerometer data when you turn your phone. This is also gyroscope, but an accelerometer can do as well. And when you said a sample frequency, means that we are collecting a certain number of data points over time. So when you're saying 100 hertz, that means we collect 100 data points per second.
Exactly.
So sorry for interrupting you. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about.
Yes, this is the most important, of course. It's exactly that. So we sit there and listen, basically, visually speaking. And then once we detect the peak, and this is now where the true challenge is in impact detection, we need to determine whether this peak is now caused by a car accident or it's caused by some user interaction, by the device falling to the ground, by the user probably not being inside a vehicle but riding a bike. So we have here a set of filter logic implemented. It's a composition of heuristics, but the most strongest filter are based on machine learning here.
So again, some words we need to explain. So heuristics are basically rules that we give hard-coded rules. For example, that we say if the car is still driving after a minute after the accident, then there is, let's say, a limited likelihood of an accident.
Exactly.
And what we also need to say is that there are sensor data available from outside sensors. Like you can use a tag that is connected via Bluetooth with your phone. You can have a dongle that lives in your onboard diagnostics board, or you can have an installed hardware. But what we are saying is, and what we are specifically targeting is the smartphone. And to sum it up, what you're saying is, the difficulty is not detecting an accident. The difficulty is selecting the non-accidents, so the so-called false positives in statistics.
Exactly. This is exactly what it's about, yes.
So how do we do this?
So we're in a lucky position because we have many years of experience working with hardware-based solutions. And from all these years, we have labeled data samples from GPS, accelerometer, everything, where we know those are real, true car accidents. And we can learn from them and explore them.
So labeled in this case means that a human said, this was an accident.
Exactly.
So we trained our machine learning model saying, hey, here you have patterns of acceleration and geolocations, and this means an accident, this is no accident. This is an accident, this is no accident. And the model with the quantity of information learns.
Exactly. This is exactly what takes place. And in the non-accident scenarios, we included like very different types of activities which you perform while driving. Yeah, phone interaction, phone falls down to the ground, or just a hard brake, and then you continue to move again. So we later focus on including many different situations in the non-accident situations.
So you mentioned that we basically have two layers. One is the heuristics, so the rules we put behind, and the other is the machine learning model. So can you elaborate a little bit on some rules? And please do not disclose all our intellectual property, but just give us a let's say a little overview, a little glimpse behind the curtain, how that works.
One of them you already mentioned, so I'm not disclosing anything else, is about that we look at speed. Because if you have a car accident, what you do is directly after you stop the car, and normally you don't continue to drive immediately. Probably you move the car to the side of the road in order to keep the traffic flow ongoing, things like this. But basically we check whether there is a stationarity period after the impact. This is the most prominent filter, I would say. In order to be able to do this, we not only analyze the exact time of the impact, but we'll take a look at the time window. So we store all the data of 30 seconds before the impact to understand what have you been doing, how fast were you going, things like these. And then we evaluate up to 1 minute after the impact. Might be shorter if we already understood that you're not having an accident, but it was just some random noise signal. Yes, this is the time window that we evaluate to be very as precise as possible on a smartphone.
And to double down on speed, because when you have, let's say, when you go over a bump, let's say there is a road bump and you have a certain speed, you can have quite an impact. You can have
Yes.
easily go to 8G, 9G,
Yes.
etc. for a short period of time. But if you look at the speed before and after, and maybe you're braking a little bit because you're scared that your axis breaks, but let's say you were going 50 and afterwards you're going 40, makes a huge difference. Then if you're going 50, then we have the event, and then we have 0. So the decline of speed also plays an important role in detecting, let's say, whether it is an accident or not.
Exactly.
Awesome. So these were the rules. So, and on top, you said we put the machine learning model. So that means, what do we prioritize? Do we prioritize heuristics? Do we prioritize the machine learning model? So what comes first and why?
Well, rule-based comes first because it's quick and easy and very effective most of the time, because the majority of false positive impacts can be eliminated by speed, distance, things like these. So of course those are put first because it's crucial. We said we want to start the emergency chain as soon as possible. So we also try to keep the filtering as effective as possible. Okay.
And where do we actually filter? So, because I'm imagining a situation where you have a very hard, a strong accident, and your phone crashes against, let's say, the windshield, and probably crashes back, and somewhere breaks in the process of the crash. So, do we send an alarm to the backend and park it there and wait for signals that say it was not an accident? Or how do we do this?
No, this is very important. So as soon as we detect an impact, we store all the relevant data and send a first notice to our backend system.
How long does it take?
Couple of fractions of seconds. So this is super quick, okay? So because we have all this data already at the time of impact, and we directly send it. So there is next to no time lost. We do not wait for filtering and things. Yes.
So we avoid the case that the phone in the course of the accident,
Yes.
where it's like, normally it's not an impact, but it's a rebound and so forth. So this is a very dynamic situation, specifically in rollover accidents, or when you crash in a car and you have another car crashing into your car afterwards. So we make sure technologically that as soon as we get information, we just get it out. We just send it to the back end and then wait if there are signals that tell us it was not an accident, everything's fine because the person is still moving.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Exactly. This is exactly what's happening because it's so crucial not to miss such an intense event. Exactly. Well, and then the first notice is placed in the backend, and then the filters happen. And the last layer then is the machine learning. So we get more and more complex as we move through our false positive filter system.
Okay. So, and can we quantify? So, because obviously, if you use our system wrong, so if you set the wrong thresholds, you will get, let's say, a lot of false alarms. But if you set it right, it's actually built, and we have something that's called, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit of this, is called Acceleration Severity Indicator, ASI. What is it and how do we use it?
Yeah, well, the ASI is basically the interpretation layer. Then once we have defined, yes, this indeed was a car accident, we take a deep look at the acceleration forces, okay? So up to this point, we just check, okay, there is a peak in the acceleration magnitude. This means it's independent of the device orientation, okay? We can come back to this later. So this is very low level. And then we check, okay, on which axis, in which direction was the accident happening? So was it a lateral or side crash or whatever is going on, and how intense are the gravity forces that we register? Okay, so the Acceleration Severity Indicator.
Yes, I trained it about really, 20 times in the morning in the car to get this right.
Yeah, it's really hard getting this out. But the metric is super important because if it's like below 1, we assume that bodily injury was very unlikely to have occurred. So starting from 1 and above, it's really crucial that you forward the alarms to an emergency chain. It can be like, first layer can be a bot contacting the driver and say, hey, are you okay? Do you need assistance? Or up to the last and most intense interaction with a human being, checking the alarms and triggering emergency services.
Right, because this is really important because we want to make sure that, first of all, if a real accident occurs, we need to make sure that it actually arrives
Yes.
at the security operating center. So after, let's say, the whole processing and after the decision whether something has been an accident based on our interpretation or not, we have the opportunity to forward to a security operating center, and we do this with our own software. So, and security operating centers have two options to work with us. So one is using our web platform, and this gives them the opportunity also to manage the claims process, so to forward to another agent, to pause it, and to get the historical information, or to use an API and grasp the data over an API and use it in their own system. So what else? What are let's say, other technical challenges that we're facing around across the way? Because we said, first of all, a smartphone is not fixed in a car. Some people have a cradle, but let's say with modern cars who have, let's say, loading device in the car, they put it just on the dashboard, etc. Or they have it on the passenger seat, or it is in a, let's say, in my jacket, swinging around in the back seat. So what are our other challenges we are facing?
The other challenges, I mean, this is the most prominent because if the device is not fixed attached to the car, we have two issues basically. First is it not only detects impacts from accidents, but it detects other stuff as well. I already said something as regards this. And the other thing is that even if it were fixed in some orientation inside the car, we still wouldn't necessarily have all the information we need to interpret the accident severity, okay? Because for this, we would like to understand whether it's a lateral crash or a front or a rear crash, as I said, about the direction. So what we are doing is we are normalizing the smartphone's data in order to make the device reference frame match the car's device reference frame. And now we need to explain again, because reference framing, like you already said, the smartphone sensors, they live in a 3D space, okay? And these three axes are fixed to the device, but the device can move freely in space again.
So we need to understand how is the phone positioned in the car. And we need to understand if front of the phone means front of the car, or if your phone is lying, let's say, upside down, then maybe up can mean down and down can mean up. So normalizing the data is adjusting mathematically the location of the phone to the position of the phone to the position of the car.
Exactly.
So we need to understand what is front, what is back, what is left, what is right, what is up, what is down. This is what we need to learn.
This is exactly what we need to learn.
Is this easy? Is it easy?
For a mathematician, it's easy. But of course, it's a bit harder because this can change during a trip. Okay, it's not sufficient to say, okay, now I know it. No, a user can pick up the phone, do something, and position it completely different. So it's something
can slide on the seat when I brake over the corner.
It can fall down. You know, there is many scenarios that you need to think about and include. Yes, so it's actually challenging.
So you said one thing which is very important, that the sample frequency, I'm getting technical now, but you said the sample frequency goes to 100 hertz. I know that in normal cases, when we don't apply automatic impact detection, we work with 20 hertz. So we take like only a fifth of the number of points to detect driver behavior, braking, acceleration, etc. So we increase the sample frequency, so the number of points we take per second, by 5. That means more battery usage, correct?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
No, because battery usage on the device is not so much about accessing the data in the first place, but it's about processing and storing it. So what we do is we take this high frequency for the first layer of listening for peaks. There it's crucial because a peak really can take just
3 milliseconds.
Exactly, a very, very, very short time. And not only that there is a peak, but we also want to understand how intense is the peak. So for this, we need the high frequency. And then we can gradually downsample and process the data in different ways. And then really, as you said, the battery drain then comes from transferring data to the backend, storing it, and all these steps. This is much more cost intense.
I was referencing to this because in an earlier episode, I was talking about the, let's say, cost of battery when we take more location? Because with location, it's a different thing.
Very different, very different. Location and accelerometer data cannot be compared in the terms of battery
So
drain.
to put it like this way, is like location data is much more expensive in terms of battery usage than sensor frequency data.
Yes.
Sensor and excluding GPS, talking about the accelerometers, gyroscope, magnetometers, etc.
Yes.
So this kind of higher sampling frequency has not such an impact or close to no impact,
Yes.
whilst taking a higher frequency of, let's say, location information would have a massive impact on battery.
Exactly, yes. This has changed dramatically also over the last couple of years.
What is when we talk about real world implementation and effectiveness, so what is our expected accuracy?
Well, let me answer it in this way. Think about it that way. You have a population of around around 10,000 active users. Okay, they're driving day by day, and you observe them for 1 year, and then we expect to have like up to 300 real case car accidents.
This is
within
based
this.
on insurance, let's say statistics and historical data
Yes,
that we say
exactly.
10,000 people have about 300 accidents per year.
Yes.
Okay. So, but what does it mean? How many do we report?
It's hard to say, right?
Yeah.
So of the critical, we expect a very, very high accuracy, as we said, due to our approach. We try to store everything. Things that we miss would be the very like parking damages, for example. You just start the car, you drive out of the parking lot, and immediately you have a small, how to say,
Scratch.
yeah, a small scratch, exactly. Those things we most likely miss.
And like everywhere, like always in life, everything comes with a cost. So you want to get more accidents. Let's say you want to get also the lighter accidents. So your false positive rate. So the number or the percentage of false alarms you're getting is becoming higher. So and if you drill it up, so what I always say when I talk with insurance companies is like, if you have only a few drivers, and if you have only a few telematics customers, like in the hundreds or a few thousand, like you can go, let's say, with a lower ASI value. You can start with 0.9, 0.8, and let's say, see how your customers react. Because normally people, it's not that your phone falls down and you get a call, but it's like you have a little bump, right? You have a little bump, and it's actually a good user experience if you receive a call. But if you get in the, let's say, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 50,000, you basically cannot handle. And normally call centers charge you by the quantity of calls, so you need to bring costs down. And so you need to fine tune, let's say, your ASI value. So we normally can go up to 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, which is the, let's say, the scientific or empirical, let's say, threshold for bodily injury, I guess.
Exactly.
Did I say it right? Or?
Yeah, like literature says like an ASI value of around 1 goes in hand with a likelihood of some moderate bodily injury of like 20% or so. This is what it says.
Okay, so if I'm an insurance company, I would start, let's say, with a lower value of 0.8 or so, and let's say try and understand, because it also depends on road conditions, right? In some countries, in some regions, roads are, let's say, perfectly maintained. And there are countries and there are regions where roads are very bumpy. And maybe you have to fine tune based also on your technology. And as a last point before we summarize, I want to mention, you said a bot calling a person. So we do this, but we do this mainly for manual alarms. So in our applications, we allow for 2 kinds of alarms. One is, let's say, manual. So somebody presses a button or holds a button or whatever. So in case somebody has, let's say, a medical situation, let's say themselves, or they in a good Samaritan situation, like somebody else has a heart attack or so on, needs help, then you press a button. So in these cases, we use bots and we use AI. We use generative AI and voice bots in order to understand, because the level of false alarms is high, because people are trying these things out, right? And if you have a call agent responding every time, it would be, let's say, be a little bit cost intensive. So, but with crashes, we normally do not recommend to have voice bots, but also have a human look at the data. And as you were saying, labeling is so important. Well, a human eye sometimes sees a situation that the algorithms don't see. For example, that an accident in front of a shopping center, which is a ASI of 0.8 during high peak hours, probably does not need us to send a helicopter. Whilst if you have, let's say, an accident with an ASI of 1.5 in the middle of the night, let's say in extra urban area, we might send first responders if we cannot, let's say, get in touch with the person and understand the situation.
Yeah, context is crucial.
Context is crucial. So let's summarize. You said so much, so you need to help me because there was so much information. So what is the benefit of smartphone telematics versus smartphone crash detection versus, let's say, sensor and hardware crash detection, in your opinion?
Well, it's available to all, basically. Nearly everyone owns a smartphone, so it's freely available. We should use it. Although there is, limitations, but still.
And there's also a cost involved, right? Because
course.
if you and logistics.
Yes.
So if you're insurance companies and you need to deal with dongles, you need to deal with tags, maybe you need to think about warehousing, even though some providers offer to do the warehousing for you and just rent it out for you. But it's a logistical issue, right? Is it installed correctly? Did the customer install it at all? You paid for it. You have
maintenance.
So maintenance there is. So we have been in this situation with, let's say, installing. So I think on the best day we installed 150 devices per day. So we know how it means to deal with quantity. But as you said, democratizing the service is very important, and also making it accessible at a price point where insurance companies can actually allow to make it available to all of their users. So this is number one. So the smartphone has its limitations, but we can get a very high percentage of severe accidents. This is point number one. Point number two is more the data science and statistical approach.
Of course, this makes the thing possible in the first place.
Of course, because otherwise we wouldn't need you and your team. Well, can you reframe, talk about, let's say, heuristics versus machine learning?
Yeah, like we employ both, go from simple to more complex to make it effective and lean also this whole setup. And the most crucial part also is that AI supports us to automate parts of it already and to excel in the future.
And last but not least, we try to forward, let's say, the real accidents to security operating rooms. And it's in the under the control of the insurance company to decide at which gravity we're going to forward.
Exactly.
So awesome. So let me do the recap of the recap. So first of all, smartphones are not perfect, but smartphones are a perfect way, if you look at it from a quantitative perspective, to actually democratize helping people in the first place, because it comes at a very low price, and is, as you said, it's accessible to everybody, at least everybody who has a telematics app, because this implies that you have a smartphone. Second is we use a variety of services, but even though we use many steps in the process, we make sure that an accident is already on our backend, and everything in the post-processing, let's say, happens after, that could stop the alarm from being launched. And last but not least, implementing a security operating room can be very cost-effective and is a necessity. And from the platform perspective, we do have the necessary platforms. I'm sure other providers do this as well, where you can, as a call agent, where you can manage alarms and help customers at your best possible option. I think that's it, Katarina. And we wait for, if you have comments, if you have questions, if you have, let's say, anything you want to tell us, please talk to us in the comments below. Thank you, Katarina, for joining us. Thank you for making this, let's say, tangible, so that also people listening and not watching could have had a clear understanding of automatic impact detection using smartphone telematics. Thank you.
Thank you.